Do I have a motion to return to open session?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts and Ms. Bond? Any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to certify closed session that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Roundtree and Mr. Roberts, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to exempt application 1 from compulsory attendance due to religious exemption in Montgomery County Public Schools?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts and Ms. Parton, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
No.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
4 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to exempt application 2 from compulsory attendance due to religious exemption in Montgomery County Public Schools?
So moved.
Mr. Roberts and Ms. Parton, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Pardon? Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
No.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
4 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to exempt application 3 from compulsory attendance due to religious exemption in Montgomery County Public Schools?
So moved. Second.
Ms. Parton and Ms. Bond? Any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
No.
Dr. Roundtree?
No.
Ms. Purcell?
I guess I should have said something during discussion. We talked about Mr. Garrettson, or Dr. Gimple, handling that case in a certain way. So what does the vote need to reflect? Okay.
That's my preference.
Ms. Bond and Ms. Parton, are you comfortable with that? Okay, so for application 3, we'll table it and wait for some more information. Apologies for moving so quickly with that. Okay, moving on to the personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts and Dr. Roundtree, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes,
5 in favor.
motion carries. Our next agenda item is public address. We welcome the opportunity to hear from students, parents, employees, and community members about education matters in this community. As a reminder, the board sets aside 30 minutes to start our public address. We have the option to extend in 30-minute increments, which Ms. Reed will remind us of. If there are additional speakers after 90 minutes, the board will continue with their business meeting and hold one additional 30-minute session at the end of the business meeting. The clock continues through applause and disruptions. The more disruptions there are, the fewer speakers who get to address the board. I will call each speaker up by name in the order that they signed up. Each speaker has 3 minutes to address the board. The board does not respond to speakers during public address. Screens show when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining and when time is up. Please state your name and the area of the county in which you live. The first speaker tonight is Linwood Hudson.
Hey y'all, how we doing? I'm Lone Hudson from Blacksburg. It's good to see you all out tonight. I talk to people all the time and they ask about being on school board and if I miss it, whatever. And I always tell them the same thing. I say, I definitely miss seeing all of you and working with you on the important matters of MCPS. I miss working with this great staff that you've got here with you here, the leadership of MCPS. I miss working with these awesome clerks over here, the nicest people on the planet. I'm jealous that I don't get to work with this guy because outstanding hire that you made there. And I think I'm really excited to see all the good stuff he does. But the one thing I don't miss is some of the board drama that likes to flare up once in a while, right? So last week I had a little PTSD when I was scrolling Facebook and saw a post by a particular school board member calling out another school board member and the superintendent and the division and everything else, right? After having just witnessed a meeting where there was a complaint about the stuff taking too much time, but then also advocating for it's going too fast. So I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that, but I do agree with the general principle of that post in that this is an important process. You got to take your time. You got to get it done right. And it feels like you guys have a good process that will allow for that, right? And go as quickly as you can when you can, but slow it down when you need to, right? And that feels like the best you can do in this situation. I would imagine maybe there's some frustration in just how hard this is and how long it's going to take, and I'm sure you all kind of share that, right? So, so I guess why am I here tonight? I told you guys that I'd be your biggest cheerleader. And here I am. I don't have any pom-poms with me, but I'm going to use my coach voice because I coach volleyball and soccer. And I'm going to say, you guys are doing great. This is really hard work. It's going to take time. You got to work together on it. You got to trust each other, have the conversations, work with the administration, work with the leadership, work with the lawyers, get it done when you can. But it's important effort. If it was easy, it would have already been done. If it was quick, it would have been done. We should have started it last year, but we were busy hiring this guy over here, right? So, it's going to take time. I'm sure you guys are going to get through it. And so, anyway, I just want an excuse to come out here and see y'all tonight. So, it's good seeing you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker tonight is Dr. Catherine Davenport Davis.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Catherine Davenport Davis, and as many of you know, I teach forensics amongst other courses at Blacksburg High School. I'm speaking to you tonight out of concern over the proposed board policy 2-4.4 concerning tobacco products. As you may recall, my students and I presented to you in the spring about the vape project they were completing as part of my forensic course curriculum. The board's response and questions from our student representatives pushed me to dig much more deeply into the Code of Virginia and how it pertains to tobacco and vaping products. That research is what led me to notice problems with the terminology in the proposed policy up for vote for this evening. The proposed policy appears to be based on the May 2023 VSBA model, which prohibits a tobacco product or nicotine vapor product. Terminology dating back to 2019, but Virginia law has moved past that. By 2020, the General Assembly had separately recognized alternative nicotine products and hemp products intended for smoking. In 2024, it amended the statute itself, replacing that older terminology with the broader category of retail tobacco product, as defined in section 18.2-371.2. And that's the standard school board policy is now required to meet. That mismatch between the proposed policy and current Virginia law creates real problems. My first concern is that this model policy explicitly excludes products like Zen nicotine pouches. It states that tobacco product does not include alternative nicotine products, but then never actually prohibits alternative nicotine products anywhere in the policy. That's not a small gap. Our own student school board representatives flagged the nicotine pouches as a growing problem last spring, and my administrators tell me they're seeing more of them. Virginia's current retail tobacco product definition closes that gap. It covers products consumed by chewing, dissolving, or absorption. This policy doesn't. My second concern is that the proposed language also excludes non-nicotine vaping products, such as the so-called vitamin vapes and other products containing biologically active substances. The proposed policy's definition of a nicotine vapor product specifically requires the product to contain nicotine. Virginia law is, again, broader. Its current definition includes electronic smoking devices and substances that may be aerosolized or vaporized by those devices, whether or not the substance contains nicotine. This also creates an unnecessary inconsistency with our existing student code of conduct, which already prohibits electronic cigarettes and inhalant products. We would be adopting a new policy specifically addressing vaping that is narrower than the language we already use. That would create a completely avoidable enforcement problem. A student found with a nicotine-free vape could reasonably ask why the newly adopted vaping policy does not prohibit the product for which they are being disciplined. My third concern is that this proposed policy does not include hemp products intended for smoking, even though Virginia Code 22.1-79.5 expressly requires school board policy to include that category. A model policy should be a starting point, not a substitute for local judgment. I would hate for Montgomery County to replace existing policies with boilerplate template policies that are not reflective of the needs of our Montgomery County community. I'm also concerned that this model policy still reflects 2019 terminology, despite the numerous changes Virginia law has made since. It makes me wonder if other model policies are similarly out of date. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Okay, seeing no other signups for public address, we will consider public address closed. Next, we have consent items. Of note, the First Bank and Trust Company would like to donate $5,000 to MCPS for the Pack the Bus program. Thank you so much to First Bank and Trust for that donation. If no one wishes to move an item out of consent, we will consider those items approved. Our next item on the agenda is our financial summary report. Do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the year-end financial summary report for 2025-2026?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Roundtree and Mr. Roberts, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the payment of the bills as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts and Dr. Roundtree, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries. Okay, now we're moving into the business portion of our meeting. We'll start with a report from the superintendent. Dr. Kelly Gimple will provide our report. Thank you so much, Dr. Gimple.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. And first of all, congratulations to Dr. Davis. That is outstanding. Way to go. And you just did exactly what is supposed to happen between first read and second read. So thank you so much for that information. That was perfect. First thing I want to start with is, man, did we have a fantastic opening. I am so proud of our division and the opening that we had last week and today. Everything from our transportation department, Eddie Walters, our food services with Michelle Knotts, to our principals, our teachers, throughout the entire division. And I know that Amanda, Dr. Widener, and I visited every single school in the first 2 days. And, we both came back with just raving about just what was going on in our schools, the welcoming atmosphere, the organization. None of that happens without an extreme amount of collaboration and cooperation between everybody. Not just our teachers, but also our parents, the students themselves, the administrators, and all the way down through, like I said, our transportation department and our food services. The typical things you hear in the first week are problems with buses being on time and things like that. We had nothing. Sometimes you run out of milk at one place, or you make a bad count on a certain. None of that happened. Excellent job all the way around in the planning and the preparation for our first week of school and then into this week. I also want to say Transition Day. I just want to thank all of our schools for really trying something new. We're collecting feedback now on exactly how that went. All indications so far is that the students had a great day with their new teachers and in their new environments, and it led to a very successful next day for them, where some of those tears and some of that anxiousness maybe got out of the way because they had their own special day to start school with our pre-kindergartners, our kindergartners in 6th grade and 9th grade. Got some feedback that it may have been a long day. We may look at maybe shortening it in the future, but I do think it was a valuable experience for our children all the way through, and for those teachers also throughout the school. So great job by everybody, and thank you so much for trying something new and making it successful for your students. I do want to talk a little bit about policy. And what I'll say is this: before I conclude, all my comments for this evening, I want to briefly highlight a resource on the MCPS website that's really about how we're going to go forward with presenting our policies in support of our Montgomery County Public Schools commitment to transparency, accountability, and meaningful community engagement. This web page has been designed to provide clear, accessible information about the school board policy revision process. As policies are reviewed and updated, we want employees, like Dr. Davis, families, students, and community members to understand where each policy is in the process and to have meaningful opportunities to provide feedback before policies are adopted. Our goal is to ensure that policy development is thoughtful, consistent, transparent, and informed by the perspectives of those who we serve. A significant portion of the MCPS School Board Policy Manual is, of course, overdue at this point, and it requires a systematic review. As we undertake the important work of systematically reviewing our policy manual, I believe two things can be true at the same time. We need to move this work forward deliberately, particularly where policies need to be updated to reflect changes in law and current practice. And we need to make sure that our employees, our families, our students, and community can clearly see the work and have opportunities to provide input along the way. We've created this webpage so anyone can see the policy revision process, which policies are currently being considered, where they are in that process, and what policies will be coming forward in the future, along with providing an avenue for their feedback. You can go ahead and show the webpage now. I also want to emphasize something. A first reading is exactly that. It is just a first reading. It is not an adoption or the conclusion of the process. It begins the board's formal consideration of a proposed policy. The period between first and second read is specifically intended for evaluation, feedback, questions, and the revision before the board adopts or determines that a policy is ready for adoption. It provides an opportunity for the board to discuss, employees and community to provide feedback, and possible revision before a policy becomes a school board formal policy. Any revision that would substantially change the policy would require another first read, and any board member can pull a policy and recommend that take place. My goal as superintendent is very simple in this process. It's not to predetermine the outcome of any policy. In fact, in many cases, I am the furthest one in our division away from the policies as the superintendent, where it really impacts our students and teachers and administrators directly because they have to live and work with each of our policies every single day. So I will not be providing my own personal touch on these policies. It's not appropriate unless it is something that involves superintendent and board. As is with these first two sections. We're primarily concerned with how the board operates in terms of the superintendent and so forth. We are now getting into much more the meat of our policy manual, which really involves how schools are run. This is why we've opened up this webpage, and this is why we will provide an avenue for anybody anyone provide input on any policy throughout this process. I'll encourage everyone, employees, families, students, and members of our community to visit this page, follow that the policies are coming up. Follow along with us, provide us with feedback. Good policy is strengthened by thoughtful engagement, and we welcome that engagement, and we're providing here an avenue for that to occur. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gimple. Our next agenda item is an update from the MCEA. Katie Seidemann, MCEA President, will present an update from the Montgomery County Education Association, and this is information with no action expected. Thank you so much, Ms. Seidemann.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Purcell, Dr. Gimple, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to present to you a report on behalf of the Montgomery County Education Association. First, on behalf of the MCEA, I would like to publicly thank all of our MCPS staff who prepared our schools to be ready for our students last week. I would also like to bring to your attention, if you weren't already aware, the protected work days that were scheduled in our pre-opening calendar this year. These days were specifically designated for staff to be in their buildings working to prepare for students without any required PD on those days. This is exactly the type of time that we are asking for our staff. Time to do whatever we need to do to be ready for our students and their needs. So thank you to Dr. Gimple, to Dr. Widener for intentionally creating that time for staff. And I hope that we can all consider other ways in which we can give time back to staff. Secondly, I'd like to give the board an update on our collective bargaining negotiation progress. To date, we have had 4 collective bargaining negotiation meetings with MCPS negotiation team. We presented 18 proposals and have reviewed each of those proposals in depth. We have even already found some practical solutions for already existing issues. Unfortunately, we have not yet been able to reach a tentative agreement for any of our proposals. We are all very aware of our current financial challenges facing our school system, and we are under no illusion that all of our MCEA proposals are cost neutral, though several of them are. We want to work with MCPS to be able to advocate for collective bargaining items that would come with associated costs within the normal budget cycle, so that you all can review our proposals with the associated costs included as you begin to build the budget each fall. This way, the board can choose which proposals and priorities to include in the draft budget each year, as well as in the presentation to the Board of Supervisors. We hope that by aligning our negotiation timeline with the budget process, we can also align our collective bargaining priorities with the board's budget priorities. However, to make this change will take time and a vote from our membership. So next week, we are having an all-member meeting to discuss and vote on our next steps as an association. We will keep MCPS leadership updated as to the results of the vote, and we'll continue to share our progress with you. Lastly, we would also like to address the board's current efforts in updating the policy manual. We understand that the current policy manual is out of compliance, and we also understand the need for urgency in getting it back into compliance, which we can all agree should be done to protect our students, staff, and school system. It seems that the board has a plan to collect stakeholder feedback regarding new policy adoptions or changes, and we do appreciate that. However, I would also urge the board to make sure this process is not only available to stakeholders, but also very visible and accessible to stakeholders. Board docs can be very challenging to navigate if it's not something that you access regularly, and I would urge all board members to make sure that any suggested policy changes are easily accessible. The policy revision dashboard on the website is an excellent resource, and we particularly appreciate that there's a place for stakeholders to submit their feedback. We want to make sure that this resource is being openly advertised to stakeholders. If so, how? Does the feedback being received seem to be from one particular group? Do affected stakeholders understand which policies will affect them directly? How can we solicit more input from different stakeholders? I appreciate Dr. Gimple highlighting it tonight at tonight's meeting, and it would be even better to make sure this resource is shared even more widely. Again, we completely understand the responsibility to update the policy manuals into compliance as soon as possible. I would urge the board to make sure those updates, again, are visible and easily accessible as possible to all stakeholders through the process. I think we can all agree that we would like this process to be done quickly, but also to be done right. Thank you for your time this evening. What questions can I answer for you?
Board members, any questions for Ms. Seidman? I think we're okay. Thank you so much for being with us
Thank you
this
so much.
evening. Okay. The next item on our agenda is a categorical transfer request for fiscal year 2026-2027, which requires an approval. Do I have a motion to authorize the request to the Board of Supervisors for a categorical transfer within the 2026-2027 school operating budget?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts and Dr. Roundtree, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Pardon? Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a capital transfer request that requires approval. Do I have a motion to authorize a request to the Board of Supervisors for a capital project transfer to the 2026-2027 School Capital Fund?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts and Dr. Roundtree, any discussion? Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin? I'm sorry. Ms. Pardon?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree?
Yes.
Ms. Purcell?
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is a budget update. Trevor Bennett, Acting Director of Finance, presents an MCPS budget update for fiscal year 2026-2027. This is a presentation with no action required. Thank you so much, Mr. Bennett.
All right. Good evening, Chair Purcell and board members and Dr. Gimple. Tonight, I wanted to provide a budget update just on where we stand going into this new school year. So first, to recap, just where we ended the prior fiscal year at. On June 30th, the Board of Supervisors approved appropriation that prevented the division from exceeding its spending authority. We had some excess revenues that were applied to the deficit, which resulted in a amount due to the county a little more than $1 million. Working with Dr. Dunleavy, we have presented a plan of repayment to the county staff, utilizing grant reimbursements for expenditures that occurred in FY26. That will be reimbursed in FY27. We expect full repayment sometime in the fall. And this is a budget neutral resolution, so there'll be no impact to the FY27 budget. As a result, there is no carryover funds for this school year. Traditionally, the Board of Supervisors allows those funds to be carried over and reappropriated into the new year. And then lastly, the state budget has finalized on June 29th. That does bring additional revenues that do need to be appropriated. This list explains a few of the outstanding financial needs for the division. First, we do have rising costs for our instructional software. There are some operational needs as well, including software, maintenance supplies, and utility costs. And we also require additional funding for our special education contracted services. Some of these services have been offset by recent hiring, but there's still some additional funding needed. And then lastly is the state SOQ bonus disbursements for employees. And that leads me into my next slide. So this slide shows where we are at with the status of the employee bonuses this year. The division has certified that disbursements will occur by the end of this fiscal year. The eligibility criteria has been established by the school board. And in order to qualify for the state funding, the division must distribute an average of $1,500 for qualifying staff, as well as meet the required local match. There's a specific formula that's instituted by the VDOE, and if we meet those requirements across qualifying staff and then also meet the required local match, then we do qualify for that state funding, which has already been received. And lastly, the administration plans to monitor the budget before setting a disbursement date. We'll get a clearer picture sometime in the fall of where our payroll stands and other items. That way we can determine the best appropriate date for those disbursements and any criteria adjustments if necessary. The division, we are also implementing or enacting several budgetary measures this year. The first is a position freeze for these following positions listed here. The administration has identified these positions as non-critical for the school year. Some are new and some are existing vacancies. And then for budget monitoring, we are implementing better forecasting practices, utilizing the tools that we have available for us. We are establishing a finance committee to provide better oversight of our finances and ensure that all the stakeholders are at the table. And then my intention is to provide regular school board updates regarding the budget so you can be well informed each step of the process. And lastly, we are going to establish or publish some form of an open checkbook on the website. We're finalizing those steps to make sure that we provide full public transparency. And lastly, I want to discuss where we're at with our state revenue estimates. So again, on June 29th, the state finalized its biennium budget. It was a late approval. Typically, the state finalizes their budget much sooner. With the new governor coming in this year, it took some time to work out those differences amongst the Senate and the House. So we did get a state budget, which does bring additional revenue for the district. The current state revenue estimate we have in the budget is based on an average daily membership of 9,005 students. The administration recommends that we take a more conservative approach and reduce that estimate down to the state's estimate of right at 8,900 students. And then the estimated revenue increase as a result is a little more than $1.1 million, and a supplemental appropriation is required to incorporate that into the current budget, and that'll be brought forward to the board at a later date. My anticipation would be the second meeting in September, once we work with our departments and figure out exactly what those needs are. And now I'll open up for discussion and any questions you have.
Board members, any questions?
Okay. All right.
I do have a question about the deferred positions or frozen positions. Is that for the full academic year you're planning to freeze them, or?
No, this is temporary. We're going to continue to monitor the budget and see if any of these can be reenacted into the school year. But these were identified as non-critical. So if necessary, yes, it would be through the whole school year, but we don't anticipate that.
These are not new positions except for the fine arts coordinator, which that role has been distributed a little bit, right? But the rest of them are new positions. And so as we become a little bit more secure and have a really firm understanding of exactly where we're at, then we can start filling those positions.
And just maybe to get you to restate, Mr. Bennett, I apologize. You talked about the second meeting in December. Just, typically we have our line item budget and we kind of set priorities of things that we're going to fund or not fund. And given the late news from late approvals from the General Assembly and other things, that wasn't really something that we ever did. And is that what we're doing at the second meeting in September? Or is that something that the division needs us to do, to say, we as the board would like you to focus here and not there?
Yes.
We have a budget that far exceeds our budget allocation.
Right. In order to, we must appropriate the additional anticipated revenue from the state in order to incorporate it into the budget. And we do have these outstanding financial needs. So the recommendation is to appropriate those funds now. And the reason I mentioned the second meeting in September is that gives us a little more time to work out those needs and the exact dollar amounts with our departments, and also get a clearer picture of our payroll and the projected forecast for that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that clarification.
Sure.
Any other questions, board members? Thank you again.
Sure.
Can I?
Oh,
You stay
Dr.
one-
Gimple, go ahead.
I just want to point out how hard this gentleman is working and has been working over the last bit of time here, all summer really, just to make sure that we're just able to meet the needs financially of our division. It's a lot of work. He's taken on basically 2 jobs over the last, bit of time here and has really done a fine job. And Trevor, I just want to say publicly, thank you for your work, the extra time you put in, your level of communication with our staff, and just the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Our next agenda item is monitoring for disparities and outcomes. Stacy Wright, Director of Equity and Diversity, Robert Ratcliffe, Director of Technology, and Dr. Julie Ligon, Director of Special Education, will present information on second semester monitoring for disparities and outcomes in Montgomery County Public Schools. This is information and no action is expected. Thank you all for being here tonight.
I have my counterparts back there sitting just in case I get stuck. So I would like to say good evening to Board Purcell, board members, and Dr. Gimple. This is our report that we had sent to you all in July, but you all asked for a presentation. And so we're just going to go ahead and tell you where we landed after the first year of monitoring for disparities. So the 3 numbers here that you see are the number of students who is the data set that we use for the full year. So this is the total number of students who were enrolled at least for 1 day and may have had any kind of infractions in our school division. 6% of those students, which is 6%, which is 588 students received ISS. 4.6% received OSS, which equals to 452 students. Semester 2 involved more students than in semester 1 in both outcomes of ISS and OSS. And so when we look at those students, even though it was more, it was just a slight increase. And we know that when we get to the end of the school year, sometimes we get a little agitated and things just aren't working out as well as we think that they are. So those are increases that we sometimes expect. But even with that, it wasn't a great increase in the number of ISS or OSS for our students. We have here the suspension by gender. And so what we learned is for some reason, our young men are just having a harder time staying in school, but we're working on that to try to figure those out. And then our young ladies are staying in school more often with ISS, but we see in the second semester that there is a change and it is a slight increase. We compared the students, but however, there was a slight increase for both males and females in the second semester. And if I'm going too fast, just tell me to stop. Again, as we talked about it, we noticed that our male students had a higher ISS and OSS risk indexes. So risk index, in which we always have to make sure that we're telling the difference between risk index and risk ratios, is just the semester suspension counts divided by the gender population. Where we see most of our students being suspended are in our economically disadvantaged students. And I don't know if you remember from the first semester, we talked about the different codes that usually came with that. And they were like our RB codes, which those are our relationship codes. And I think that many times when we see different student groups that get suspended more than other, it has something to do somewhat with our relationships that we have with our students. And so our economically disadvantaged students were 40.2% of our enrollment, which that is a pretty significant risk index or risk ratio for our students who are economically disadvantaged to be suspended. And it is also possible that our economically disadvantaged students, that they intersect over different student groups as well. So for our full risk, it varies substantially across race and ethnicity. What we noticed that we had a high risk for Black or African American students with their ISS being 9% and then their OSS being 9.24%. Black or African American students and with mixed race with white, it is 8.5% ISS and then 8.0% OSS. So the risk ratio is 2.03%. So this means that Black students and mixed race students with Black and white are 2 times more likely to get suspended than our white students. Risk ratios show where discipline gaps are the widest. And so our white students equals 1%. So we try to look at anything over 1% of being something that we need to keep our eyes on, that we just need to really watch. And again, in these risk ratios, we see a 1.77 for our white and African American students, and then a 2.03% risk ratio for our Black or African American students. So we just want to make sure that we're keeping eyes on those students, especially when it comes to OSS, because we know that students can't learn if they aren't in the building. The next group that shows a clear risk disparity is our students with disabilities. And we've been talking about this many times in much of our data across the school division. And our special education department, which I have Dr. Ligon here, is conducting professional development to deepen their staff's understanding of the impact of disabilities on behavior. And that is very important. So some of the things that they're trying to do is to make sure that they understand in their goals, that they are setting behavior goals based on whatever the student's disability is. We, as a part of the Office of Equity, the Office of Student Services, and Special Ed have worked together to complete a report for the state that tells us where some of those disparities are and how we can make some of those changes. And this is what Dr. Ligon and our staff have come up with, and we are supporting her in the Office of Student Services and Equity to make sure that all of our staff is getting this type of professional development. And then we also noticed that the IEP enrollment share, or the number of students that are who have IEPs, does not match the suspension share. So they're 14.65% of our enrollment. 29.3% of our special education students are receiving ISS, and 38.7% of our students are receiving OSS. And so together we are, again, this is across departments. It's not just we're leaving this to be something that the special education department has to do itself. In all of our professional developments, we are talking about these things. We're talking about trauma informed. We are up in the ante with our restorative practices now. Like, really, it's been a while since we have had training in those practices. So we're making sure that across all of our departments that we are hitting those things when we are having professional development for our staff. And so OSS day totals, this just means the average days that our students are missing because of OSS. And so we know if our students have OSS, that's something that we have assigned. And so the average number of days that our students are missing are 5.3. Most students, though, only receive about 1 day of OSS. And so, again, as we can see, the students with disabilities has a large share of those OSS, those out-of-school suspensions. And then, As we've talked about earlier in this presentation, the economically disadvantaged, again, also is showing some levels of day totals for OSS that we really need to keep our eyes on as a school division. So in our first report, we identified tools to help to reduce disparities. And so root cause identification, this is probably the hardest one for us to really pin down and to identify. But let's give you I'll give you some reasons that might happen. It might be the relationship building. I think things like our transition day has also helped with that, where when small groups of students were together and our teachers and our staff, had their all hands on deck and able to build relationships with those students. We are revamping our PBIS implementation, and then we're also doing instructional rounds throughout the division. Before we did literacy rounds last year, but this year we are doing instructional rounds so we can look at the teaching and making sure that it's not something that our students are missing in their classrooms. As far as stakeholder reflection, we will continue to use surveys, and we will continue. We have a data dashboard that we're about to implement for all of our school divisions and for our schools, so they can see this every month where their school lands. And so then they can do something about it. So they can call and reach out to us here at central office in order for us to provide the support that they need in their schools. We're making sure that all of our PDs are not ones and dones. And then not only are we the expectation for our teachers and our staff to have these PDs, we are doing these professional developments with our leadership team, because we can't expect our teachers and staff to be able to handle these things if we as a leadership team don't understand. And then our tiered systems for support, we are doing an MTS reboot. We had started this when Mr. Howard was here, and we had to put a freeze because we got a new superintendent, and VTSS will not even do it unless your superintendent agrees. So we just got that on, I guess, last Friday, that Dr. Gimple had spoke with the people for VTSS. We have an MTSS specialist who is working through my office, and we are going to really start looking at those Virginia tiered systems of support to make sure that we are supporting a well-rounded student, the whole-rounded student, mental health, academics, behavior, all of those things in one place. And then lastly, all of our departments are seeking to deepen their understanding of trauma, implicit bias, poverty, and mental health, and how it actually impacts student learning. And so we will keep developing this as a comprehensive way to keep our staff informed of what we're doing. And then this slide says what the board should carry forward. Not that we would ever think of telling you what you should do, but here's where we would like to go from here. We would like you to consider what the data says. Even though the counts have risen a little bit from first semester to second semester, it isn't something that we can't control. We're looking at the largest disparity, so that we'll continue to do that and work with the special ed department in order to do that. And then we want to use these questions that we have here for ongoing monitoring. We want to make sure that we are looking at our risk gaps lowering. And so next year, or this school year, because we've had one full year, this is like our North Star to tell us which way we need to go with our data. And with the new data dashboard, with all of us working together in our departments, I just believe that we'll be able to decrease this a lot more with our disparities. Making sure our support and climate measures progress. So we might not get to where we want to be automatically in 1 year. We know it didn't take 1 year for us to get here, so it won't take 1 year for us to fix it. But we're definitely working very hard and using these questions in everything we do when we're talking about our students. And then we're looking at the instructional time loss from OSS and just continuing to try to make sure that those declines. So we want you guys, not that we're not honest with you all the time, but we want you to keep us honest and keep these 4 questions when you're asking us questions about how these disparities and how our discipline is affecting our students and our staff. And then allowing last year to be the data that we used, and we're getting better supports for our data. We're getting better tools that we can use with our data so that we all can see all of the time and not just waiting for the 2 reports that we have to do according to this policy, that you can see all the time. And feel free to call any of us or ask Dr. Gimple about anything that we are doing if you don't understand. Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have data or information on the racial and economic status of students who are just sent to the office before discipline is imposed?
Not at this time, but it could be something that, and that's the part when we talk about root causes, like the things that there are certain teacher managed behaviors that we have, but we do have simple discipline where we can put like the minor infractions. So say Stacy gets in trouble for throwing her pencil, but instead of the teacher sending her to the office, she can enter it into or he can enter it into a minor infraction. And so simple discipline kind of had, like I said, with Mr. Howard leaving, we got started and then we kind of stopped, but now we have that and we can monitor that a little bit better now.
Okay, my concern, I don't know anything if this is accurate or not, but
Okay.
I just want to make sure people aren't automatically being sent more often than others. Just making sure everybody gets a fair shake.
And I
Does that
think
make sense?
it does make sense. And that is, what some of the training that we do with our staff, that we're trying to make them, recognize, like even cultural differences or different things that, I might expect at my home. And not that we don't expect all of our students to be respectful, but like rolling of the eyes. My granddaughter is 5 and she does it all the time, but I know that that's something that she's not necessarily meaning to be disrespectful, but we just have to keep reminding her of that. So we are teaching the behaviors that we want to see. I know, I think it lasts forever. Her mother is 32 and she still rolls her eyes.
Board members, other questions? Ms. Parton?
Stacy, thank you so much for all the information. Very helpful. This is an area we definitely need to look at and improve on, and hopefully we can get a good jump on that with what you've presented. And thank you guys as well for your input. So something that struck me on slide 13 was the root cause identification.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have to agree with you and maybe even go a little bit further than that, because we don't want to have to expel any of our students whatsoever. But trying to figure out how we can prevent that. So I was just thinking about some things that you had said and you had shown in the slides, and specifically with our OSS and our ISS incidents, have we looked at more in-depth data on the OSS and ISS, maybe such as like the breakdown of the incident details and, maybe, and even going as far as not even listen a student, but like calling it student A, student B, just something for us to kind of maybe see what we need to work on and where we're having issues at. And then with that, trying to figure out if I know we have repetitive students sometimes, often too, and I hate to see that as well, but maybe figure out maybe if there are repetitive students in that, why they're continuing to commit the same offense. I didn't know if we were looking into any of that.
What we had last year didn't necessarily help us to do that well. I mean, we could do it, but it would be like almost antiquated. Like you sit down with all of the behaviors and then you have to almost write. But what we are proposing with our data dashboards is going to help principals to be able to see that. I remember when I was a principal, I would keep a notebook because we had the little triplicates of when we wrote somebody up and it wasn't in a computer. And then I had, Ms. Purcell has 25 students that keep coming to the office from her classroom. What are these incidents and what are those types? But now what we're doing now with the new data systems and everything that we're trying to put into one place, place, I think we'll be able to help principals get a better grasp on that, because that was one of our barriers, so to speak, because it was very hard to collect that way.
Right. And then hopefully with that, maybe we can even break it down by how we have it broken down here.
Yes,
to maybe
ma'am.
help us understand a little bit more. even
Yes,
with
I'm sure
that.
Robert can figure that out.
I have no doubt he can. And so also, the consistency across the schools, are we keeping track of that somehow?
Yes, and we can kind of see that a little bit across the schools. But like I said, the things that we were putting into Power School didn't necessarily help us, but we can see it a little bit, and we're getting better at that.
Okay.
So,
I'm
Ms. Pardon, Stacy has alluded to the data dashboard several times. That's something new. And so this will provide the capability of all of our principals to see how their data compares to other schools in our division on an ongoing basis. On a monthly basis, it'll be updated. And the hope is that, not the hope, but the direction of that will be to encourage conversation between our principals, between our leaders, to talk about their discipline and, and to really ask, why are we having an uptick here? What are you doing differently in your school? So we can start comparing some of our best practices. And if there is a need for us to send resources to any school, we can do it immediately. We don't have to wait till end of the year data to see that there's a discrepancy. We're going to see that right away, and we can react to it. Stacy's office and Mr. Garrettson's office, we can respond to that and provide resources where it's needed on an ongoing basis that will hopefully reduce the number of cases that we have here.
That sounds great. And part of it is trying to catch it early, I
Yes.
know, and to discourage repetitive behavior as well. So the more information we have and know, I think the more helpful we can be. Do we also have, the incidents that are being notated as to what incidents are getting related to the OSS or ISS prior to any possible suspension? Like, I know we have a policy for certain things in our policy that is automatic, that
Right.
come to us, has come to us before in some of our hearings. But do we take note maybe of anything of a lesser, something that's maybe not mentioned in our policy that maybe you all are seeing or being made aware of, that if we start seeing this more and more, that would give us some information as to what we need to maybe think about and work on and see what we can do as far as implementing something in the policy if we have to, or getting feedback from teachers and, because what they're having to deal with and the principals and the administration as well.
And I think we can see that with our codes, and that's what we brought you the first semester was the codes that we were seeing the most of, and good for us that the codes were only relationship behaviors, because those are things that we can talk about and things that we can change and things that we can help develop our staff with. So yes, we can see which things happen the most. I think as we start getting further into our MTSS process, it'll give us all of these things for us to try before we have to, even if we have to send a student to the office, it doesn't mean that they have to be suspended or they have to go to ISS. So just training our staff or developing our staff in ways, because we've done this before, but it's been a little while.
Right.
And so we've gotten a lot of new staff. We got people that have come from different places. So we just want to make sure that we are consistent across the board with our professional development. That's why our departments are working so closely together.
Okay, perfect. And you did mention the SPED children also having that higher number. It may have been the highest. I'll have to go back and see, but they were right there at the very top.
Yes.
Do we have any behavior that we monitor, maybe is the word I want to use, to see if that is directly correlated to the disability, or is that something that takes a while, or maybe repetitive behavior before we can actually say that a certain behavior is related to that person's disability?
Good question. We do monitor for patterns of behavior because there are patterns to the behavior. And what we say to principals, if you see that student 2 or 3 times, every kid has a one-off. Every kid has a bad day. Every person has a bad day. But you start to see this person 2 or 3 times in your office, contact us because we need to get in there and look and see if there's a pattern of behavior. And we need to make sure we have a large population. We have high incidence disabilities, learning disabilities, and health impairment. Usually that's a behavioral disability. So we do have a large population of students with behavioral disabilities. So for me, it's really important. We're going to work with teams this year. I taught kids with behavioral disabilities. I take it very seriously. You can teach children how to regulate. And so we're going to work with our teams this year so they understand the impact of that disability if it's behavioral, and how you need to write goals to help this kid learn some self-control and kind of comport how they have to in school. So we are looking at that, and yes, there are patterns.
Right.
And we're trying to help them learn how to identify those.
Right, and I know it's difficult, like you said, everybody has a bad day and things like that, and, you know, while I do understand that there are issues with each disability, you know, we still, at least I do, and I feel like the board does as well, we still want to make sure that we hold our students accountable, because when they leave here, they're going to be held accountable, and we want to make sure that they understand that, but we also want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, because if it's something that, you know, is causing it, you know, and I just would like, the more information we have when I sit down to do something of this nature, because it's a big deal to me, and the more information we have and possibly can get and try to figure out what's going on, I feel like I can do a better job at either asking my questions or trying to do the best thing for the student. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I like our collaboration. It's really working, and I agree with you, and I say to teachers all the time, these kids have to graduate, they have to work, they have to function.
Right.
So we have to get on this early and try to help them with these behaviors. I
Yes,
agree with
ma'am.
you 100%.
Great. Thank you so much.
Other board members, Ms. Bond, Dr. Roundtree?
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of good information here. So just reiterating what Ms. Parton said there, looking at demographics by school would be very valuable as well. And in addition to that, looking at demographics by month of the year, not just the 2 semesters. I know anecdotally with expulsion hearings, we kind of see things in November, December timeframe. We see things in January, early February, then it dies down a bit, and then it kicks back up in May. But that's anecdotal just for expulsions. That's a relatively small data set. It'd be interesting to know those numbers for in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, if there's ways that we can help kids get back into school after the winter break without having the discipline issues. And then 13, I was glad to hear the fact that the transition day, I didn't appreciate the fact that transition going from one school to another, like just that extra day that's not as many people getting to be able to interact with the staff, learning the school, really can reduce the stress and then reduce later discipline problems. So I really appreciate that being pointed out, and I'm really interested in hearing feedback from the educators on how that process went and continuation of it throughout future years. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wright. I know that when the data is is ready is sometimes a difficult spot to identify. So I appreciate you sending this to us early, and then also doing something for, that's more public, so that, everyone can kind of see clearly what we're trying to address and how we're doing it. So just thank you for pulling that together and for being here tonight. And thank you to Dr. Ligon and Mr. Ratcliffe as well. My question was really kind of similar to Ms. Parton's, just about frequent flyers, I think is the term I've heard sometimes, just kind of making sure that the kids who are struggling kind of have the support that they need, and there's like that cross-school conversations when they go from elementary to middle and that kind of thing. So thank you so much for for that. And I guess we'll see you again in a in a couple of months with an update.
Thank you so much. And I do want to definitely thank Mr. Radcliffe, because I tell you what, I call him like, Robert, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Wait a minute, this. And we have changed this presentation 100 times even before we got it in front of you guys to try to make sure that you have the best information possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Radcliffe, you're on in the hot seat again. Our next presentation is a technology update. Robert Radcliffe, Director of Technology, will present an update on technology in MCPS. This is a presentation, no action is required. And Mr. Radcliffe, I just appreciate you kind of formalizing the answer that you gave at the last meeting, just because this has been a national, international, statewide discussion about school and technology, and so you can kind of just give us a more formal overview of how we're dealing with it here. So thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, before I get started, I do got to thank the entire technology department. They got the schools ready to go for all the technology needs, all the new accounts, all the new Chromebooks. We're receiving the phones in for the phone upgrades. Those were supposed to come over this summer. That was a delay, like everything else is right now. So we're developing a plan to get those into the schools very soon. So I first want to thank them for all their work. As we're going through this, keep in mind that what we're looking at is what's best for students. So this is the plan from where we are now all the way until after it's been implemented. What are we going to do? We can't just implement it and then move forward. We don't want to get in a situation where we are now, where we're so heavily involved in one thing. We need to evaluate it and keeping it updated as we're going throughout the years. So one of the first things I want to mention is that we've already put some things in place. There is less screen time during this past year. The elementary curriculum team really put a focus on the elementary schools to lessen the screen time. So that work was done by Dr. Mitchell and that team there. So that was already started this past year. K through 1 devices, we lowered the amount of devices in those classrooms, which I spoke about last time. And so that is going to continue going forward with that. Last year, we also shut down accounts over winter break. We'll see if that is going to be the plan as we're developing this, if that's something we should do as well. Some feedback we received from that, especially at the high school level. There are some students who were finishing class assignments and they were given over winter break to do that. So making sure that those students, one, either have access, or two, the teachers have enough time to provide that information to them beforehand. So again, we're excited about the feedback receiving, and that goes into the next slide, which is it starts with community voice. We want to make sure that we're getting information and knowledge from parents and guardians, which we have received, and the Donovan Group did a wonderful job providing us this lovely document. It analyzed all the data, so that's something that we don't have to do. We had 1,084 responses from parents and guardians. The majority of parents, K through 8th, just giving you some information from this, not saying this is what we're going to do not want their students bringing their Chromebook home. The other thing that I noticed was the elementary students or the elementary parents want YouTube block for their students. So these are all things that the focus group is going to be reviewing. We're going to be reviewing this, reviewing the feedback we received from students, teachers, and then also administrators. I will say that over this past year, I've already started receiving feedback. These people have reached out to me. The administrators at the middle schools, at 2 of the middle schools, have already talked to me. Can we keep Chromebooks here at school? Can we not, can we turn off access at 10 p.m. because we're getting alerts? And that's the other piece that we need to make sure the public knows, is when a student does something that is not great on a computer, then that phone call or a text message or an email gets sent to that principal. And that can happen at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. It also goes to Jason Garrettson. It can happen at 2 a.m. if they're using our device. So is that something that we need to keep in mind as well for our administrators and their mental health? So as we're moving through this, you'll see that we have parent surveys, staff and student surveys. Staff surveys were sent out. We're finalizing the student one, and hopefully we'll have that out soon. We're going to be doing that with our secondary, so middle school and high school. It's kind of hard to get that information from elementary. I taught elementary school, and if you ask students to raise their hand until they feel like they've raised it for 5 minutes, you're going to have a variety of things. So when you ask them, how long do you think you're on a computer for? They may not be able to tell you a full answer there. So we're going to focus on that middle school and high school. We're going to do the focus group meetings, and that's I'm working with Andrew Webb right now to get that information out to all stakeholders, including community members who may not have a child in our schools currently, but we want them to be part of this focus group as well. As we're reviewing all the input, we're reviewing data, and also reviewing things that have been published with data that backs some of the things we're wanting to do. Student voices, I'm excited to start that and have some conversations with students at lunches. And I'll be reviewing all these things with the elementary and secondary committee in October, and hopefully have a plan for you all with what that looks like at the end of October. So as we're building this, these are the things we have to keep in mind. First, of course, is making sure what is best for students. But learning values, does it fit that developmental stage of the student? So we don't want to make a blanket, this is what we're going to do. It has to follow with where the student is. A balance, making sure that we're protecting space for print discussion, handout work, and sustained offline focus. And a feasibility. For example, if we say we're going to class set in all of middle school, we're going to have to increase our number of Chromebooks and then purchase charging stations. So is that feasible with our current budget? These are all things that we're going to have to discuss during this building of the plan. One of the biggest things is that this change is not a change from the technology, it's also mainly a change within instruction. And so the instruction department is going to be heavily involved in this conversation because the Chromebook is a tool, it's not the instructional model. And so here you have the digitals can strengthen, but also learning can still, these learning things over here on the right side can need to continue happening. We do have our textbooks are online. And so we got to make sure that our students have access to them. That's one thing we'll have to keep in mind. We have timely practice and feedback. When you do an assessment online, the student's able to get that feedback right away. That's also one less thing that the teachers have to worry about taking home the grade. It gives them that feedback. So we want to make sure we're supporting them as well. And as I mentioned, the right balance is looking at the growth of the student. So that's K through 2. That's when you get to foundation of practice. 3 through 5, 6 through 8, all the way up to 9 through 12. So we want to make sure that this plan, we don't want to make blanket statements of reducing time, screen time. We want to make sure the plan is addressing each level as they're going through their school career in Montgomery County Public Schools. So these are the things that I've identified as the 6 things that we must answer. The purpose in learning, the access and balance. Again, are we doing class sets? Are we doing one-to-one in those grade levels? Is it school only, take home? Is it a mixture? These are all things that we need to answer. Curriculum assessments. What assessments and curriculum things are we using? And do they provide value, especially if there's something we're using online? Student support and standards. We have to also teach digital citizenship to all of our students. And so we got to make sure that those standards that are part of that, we're able to teach them that may involve them being on a device to learn some of those skills. Teaching and feedback, which tools can improve feedback, making sure that that's happening. And as I mentioned, the feasibility and accountability. And I've kind of hit on this a little bit, but as we're looking through this, we have to remember that our textbooks are digital. Our state assessments are on computers, so we have to prepare our students for those. We have to make sure that we're still having timely feedback so that way our teachers are able to make adjustments to their lessons those coming weeks or those coming days as students are giving feedback or answering things on assessments. Accessibility for our students with IEPs and 504s, making sure that we're not leaving them out of this plan. And a continuation of learning, coursework access during absences, disruption, and snow days. We want to make sure that that plan includes what does that look like a snow day for kindergarten through 2nd, 3rd through 5th, and so forth. But we want to make sure this plan is comprehensive and we're not leaving anything out. At the end of this, we want to make sure we're setting some learning goals so that way we can measure them. Is the quality, is it improving? Is engagement and focus, is that improving? Is that increasing? Are we making sure that all students have access to all supports and resources? Again, going back to the teacher feedback. And then also making sure that the cost is something that we can sustain. These are all things at the end of this that we need to be measuring year after year after year and making adjustments as needed. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Radcliffe. Board members, any questions? Dr. Roundtree?
Sure. Thank you very much for the presentation. I guess not so many questions, just comments. This is something I think every parent has trouble with in their own home, balancing the use of screens and technology. You see the students working on math and working problems, getting direct feedback, getting hints to problems when they get stuck, so that they're not getting overly frustrated with school. And those are great things. I was able to go through those when we were doing the math curriculum, and I wish I had that when I was in school. But then also the over large amounts of time on the computer, diddling around with games and whatnot. And then the question of using them at hours when they should be sleeping and whatnot. I think it's a great start. I'm glad that we're looking at reducing it in the younger kids and trying to figure out exactly what the balance is with the middle school and high schoolers. One question would be for middle school, as you are reducing use there potentially, with kids that are in multiple classes, is it going to be a teacher-to-teacher or a course-to-course type structure? Because some of those kids in 7th, 8th grade, and even in 6th, are in high school classes where the high school classes are using those computers. Or will it be a blanket type of activity? And I know that y'all are still building the plane while flying it, so you may not have an answer. But
Yeah, that's something that we're going to get feedback from the teachers on, and that's what the focus group which will include teachers as well as students and community members. We need to keep in mind, that's why we can't. I mentioned we don't want to have a blanket statement on we're reducing. There's got to be some things like that you just mentioned built into it.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Other board members? Ms. Barton?
No, just want to say thank you and glad to see that we're looking at this because I do think it has become an issue, and I think it's become an issue with more than just being on the screen so much, but with learning, because I don't think we're really learning. We're more memorizing and we're getting help, and I don't have any problem with our students getting help whatsoever, but it may help with the ChatGPT and maybe the AI too, but you didn't hear me say that. But I think when the students have to start using their brain a little bit more, and this goes for everybody, when we've gotten so reliant upon devices to do everything for us, we don't remember phone numbers anymore. People don't remember their own number. That's a problem. So I think going back old school, I like a book in my hand. I'm old school. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm old school. But I like having a book in my hand. I like to read. I hate to read on, people can read on Kindles and phones. I hate it. I like pen and paper. My daughter says I'm crazy. Just put it on your phone. Why are you writing stuff down? I've got notes everywhere. But that's how I have come to know and remember and learn. So I do think there is something to be said about going back. Technology is wonderful, and I'm glad we have it there, and I think we should continue to build upon it. But at some point, I do think we need to go back and see where we can meet in the middle to try to do what's best for our kids. So thanks for all your work.
Mr. Roberts?
I have a statement. Everyone needs less screen time. Everybody. I've heard the children say, touch grass. I don't really understand what that means. But everybody, put the phone down for a few minutes.
how many screens do you have in front of you right now?
And I was going to. One of the things I'll say based on that, the parents who filled this out said 1 to 2 hours was the most frequently reported amount of daily non-school screen time at 48.7%. So think about that. Our students are going home, if they're on the screen for 4 hours at our schools, and they're going home for another additional 1 to 2 hours.
At least.
At least.
Well,
yeah.
And I'm just going to make a comment exactly because as parents are saying that, I want them to look in the mirror and be a good example, because if you're at a restaurant, if you're somewhere you look around, it's not always the students that are on phones. It's the parents. And I'm guilty. I'm not saying I'm not, because if I sit down, sometimes that's when I check my email, because at work, I don't ever get a chance to do anything like that. But I've made it a point to pay attention. And a lot of times, it's not our young people. It's I'm going to say myself as an old person, okay? And so let's be good examples. Let's just don't sit and point and say, hey, you. Let's look and say we need to put down the phones and start, paying attention and having conversation. We're all guilty of not, and playing catch up. And I understand completely, just as much as anybody does. So, I mean, no disrespect to anyone when I make that comment, but I have paid attention, and it is a very real, true statement. So,
Dr. Gimple?
So this is really being studied really across the nation. I know that as a superintendent, I'm a part of 2 advisory groups, one through UVA, another one through our VAS consortium that is looking at this, to try and help Virginia establish some guidelines, right, and some brackets that we could provide statewide, right? So, it's innovation with guardrails, and I think, some of you might go back so far as you remember when math classes started using calculators for everything. And what a shock that was, that we weren't doing, long written math. And that was a challenge, right? And we've had to learn how to mitigate that with authentic learning, right? To ensure that students are achieving authentic learning. And it's the same thing when really the internet was introduced, right? And really that was part of my era, right? All of a sudden you could not have to go to the library and pull out your card catalog and walk out of the library with 10 books, but you're just doing your research online. And, it's evolved, right? And so AI now is another challenge for us to learn. How do we use this? We can't put our head in the sand and act like it's not here. It is. But how do we teach our students to use it responsibly, and while ensuring that authentic learning is taking place within our schools? And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that's coming forward. And Rob, I appreciate all the research that you're doing with this and collecting as much feedback as possible. Very professional study you're doing here. Not surprised at all. And Stacy, also, I want to say thank you to you. She has a heart as big as this room here for kids, and is so interested in making sure that all of our kids are provided with a great education here. I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that how much work you put into everything you do. And Rob, thanks for collecting all that data for her. And I'm sure we're going to be kind of inundated with more and more from you on this topic, and more from the state as well. So thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Ratcliffe. I don't know that I have any questions really, because you're in the middle of data collection. It seems like you're attempting to have the most thorough process possible, so that when you look at everything, you can make good choices. I mean, that's really just to reiterate what you said. I feel a lot of connection to both Ms. Parton and Mr. Roberts' comments about the need for something more tactile and less is more at this point. But we also kind of have to live in a place of reality, and I'm glad that we're taking an approach that's not top-down, uniform, that might exclude something important that we wouldn't know that we're not considering. So thank you again for your work and for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll mention that one thing I did forget to mention, this will help lead some of their strategic planning, some of those discussions, along with the technology plan that is also up. So this is going to really help drive that. So thank you all.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is related to our policy review. This is section 2, which is second read and potentially up for approval. MCPS policy section 2 were presented on August 4th, 2026 as a first read. The policies are brought back tonight for a second read and potentially approval. Leah Bressler, Director of Organizational Compliance and Policy Review, is available for questions Do we want to start with questions, or we like to make our motions, and maybe we start with some questions before we make a motion? You want to make a motion and then have discussion?
Sure, I'll move.
I
I'll
think
make a
we
motion.
might be amending our motion. I don't know.
We might. I'll move these toward, or to approve these policies for section 2, pulling 2-2.1 and 2-4.4 for further discussion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So, 2.244 is the policy related to Dr. Davis's comment about controlled substances. So updating that language. And the second policy that you wanted to pull, Dr. Roundtree?
It was 2-2.1, and it's related to FOIA requests.
So I know that one has a regulation, and that is really new for MCPS. We don't operate with regulations, and I think some of the concern was related to things within the regulation. So do you want to talk about that, or do you want to talk about that now, or is that something you just want to? Thank you, Ms. Bressler, for your hard work and for being here tonight.
So the 2-2.1R is the regulation or the policy?
It's the regulation.
Okay. For the regulation, I would, let's see, rather than calling out specific names in there, I would encourage us to have a general office and general email that is forwarded to the person in charge of it. That way, you don't constantly have to update this thing. And if somebody retires and you fill in the position, then it's automatically taken care of. I think there's other positions around the county that I've heard something about having such an email and somebody having 2 emails, and there being some question about that with similar types of activities, with things that somebody needs access to a group of people emailing, and then if they retire, that same group of people needs to email that same person, like AP purchasing, things of that nature. Anyway, back to this policy specifically, or this regulation specifically, with my confusion of regulations and policies. Also, it looks like we request everything in writing. Although you can make a phone call to request it, it's not clear that a verbal request is a request. It is definitely clear that a written request is a request in the policy. Is that intentional, or?
I think we'll take both, and I can take the comments that you've made tonight, and we can rework this one, and I can bring it back for your review, either as a first.
Let me interject there.
Sure.
Because you're not changing the policy. You're not making a significant change. You are making small suggestions. You're taking out names and you're putting in titles, and you're changing, right to call. That you can do right now and still approve, because you're not making a significant change between the first read and adoption. Now, if you were going to change the entire policy or the entire regulation, like you had a completely different idea of how to carry that out, we would take it back and it'd be another first read at another date. But you're making a very small suggestive change, which would be accepted by the board if they so choose, and you could still push that policy through.
Right.
And that's just providing context to. Or you could choose to say, nope, go back and do it over, I want to hear it next time. That is completely up to you all.
Right. Yeah, and with the way that we made the motion, we can vote on the first set and then make motions to appropriately change. But
Well, can I just make a friendly amendment and say we remove Ms. Osborne from that? It's on page
2.
2. I think that settles it, if we can just remove her name that way.
And add an appropriately named email that forwards to the officer.
FOIA@mcps.org. Thanks, Mr.
Sounds
Ratcliffe.
great.
I've renewed my second with those minor changes and ask that the vote be called, please.
I think I have to amend.
You have to amend?
I have to amend, I think.
Then you
Or I
amend
have
it.
to approve your amendment.
Approve my amendment.
Accept it.
I so amended, you so approved. I
Excellent.
assume.
The what we're talking about though is the exhibit, not the regulation. I just checked because I didn't think I had Tasha's name in the regulation, but it is in the exhibit, which is to go to the website. So I just wanted to make sure that the motion reflected that.
Okay, so that is the policy.
It's not we have the proposed policy, we have a proposed regulation, and then I put in here for just for your edification, the exhibit that we put on the website, because it's also part of the requirement that we have a website, and that's what that exhibit is. So that would just get posted to our website once approved.
Okay.
Then, just for clarification, then 244, in light of Dr. Davis's presentation, that's something we would pull and rewrite for you and would come back for first read, because that's considerable change and addition
It is.
and augmentation. And so with her research that she's provided to us and that excellent presentation, we can go back and rework that and present it for you next time.
Well, I guess it's your motion, Dr. Roundtree.
I updated the 2-2.1R
Okay.
activity, and I don't need to change the other one because what we motioned was what was just suggested by the administration.
Perfect.
I think now we're ready to call unless there's other comments.
I
It
do
looks
have
like-
one more comment about FOIA. I mean, I have no issue with the division kind of presenting a platform for FOIA requests that make the requester really think about what they want and need and scope, because sometimes FOIA requests are very vague and general and could be very big, and you just don't know what, you don't necessarily know the scope until someone says, sure, we'll give this to you, and it's going to cost $5,000 because it's going to be a lot of work for our employees. However, I think the law of FOIA doesn't necessarily require the use of that. So is that clear with?
We will make it clear when we put that exhibit on the website that
Okay.
we can accept phone calls, we can accept emails, and we can accept the form. The form just helps us provide kind of a tool to let people know kind of what we need to know.
Right. And hopefully it will be, that will be understood by the public. There's no desire to be evasive or prevent these requests, but
Correct.
having a more formalized process hopefully helps everyone, us, the body to process them, and for the requester to kind of really know what they're asking for. So just thank you for that clarification. Okay, so we have our motion, we have our second, we have our friendly amendment. Oh, Jamie, I'm so sorry.
I just wanted to ask a question, and it could be just a given on, let me get which one, make sure I'm saying the right code, 2-4.1 on community relations. Getting past the additive of the Boy and Girl Scout, I'm going down more of the standard rental fees. Not that I have a problem with that, because a couple years ago, that was my big push. But in all of this reading, it could be there and I overlooked it. If it is, I apologize. But I would like for something to say somewhere that the school, sports, and activities and extracurriculum always has first, choice of usage, because our fields do get rented and used by travel a lot. So I want to make sure that in some kind of, understanding there, that all of our school-sponsored extracurricular activity is put first. And I didn't see that. There's everything else, but I just didn't see that. Every kind of protective, as far as cost and who and what and why and what you've got to have, and that's great and fantastic. But I want to make sure that, we've got this, and I'm just going to use this for an example, basketball team that have rented the gymnasium in one of our facilities, and we've had a postponed game that needs to reschedule that night. So, how do we have in there a clause saying, hey, if something like that should happen, a reschedule is requested, or, school scheduling comes first?
I agree. Let me bring up our policy leads on that one.
Now, like I said, it may be in there, and I've overlooked it because there's a lot of reading, and I've had to read everything.
That's why I'm bringing our
And
policy
then
leads up. We've got Dr. Brown and Mr. Garrettson on this policy.
So currently, right now, the principal approves any outside sport-related
understood
activity.
that too.
I don't know that we have language in there, like if we had a game that had to be rescheduled, that would trump a non-school sponsored activity, so we could certainly put language in there too.
I just think sometimes it's a safety net, because we do have community members that say, well, your policy doesn't say that. Your policy states this. So sometimes it can be a loophole, and I just want to make sure that we're protected. Again, not just for sports, but all extracurricular, whether it's our auditoriums, whether it's our cafeterias, meeting facilities.
That is listed in our original policy, right? It does say school-related organizations shall have priority over non-school-related
There you go.
organizations.
There you go.
Actually, it is. Right,
Okay,
it is.
very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Just want to, as I was reading, I thought, I want to make sure that's in there. Thank you.
All right. Other questions, board members? Great. Okay, so
Vote first.
we have our friendly amendment approved, seconded.
Second.
Finished with discussion. Ms. Reed, will you please call the roll?
Can I read back the motion first?
Yes, go ahead,
Sure.
Ms. Osborne.
Okay, I have motion to approve these policies in section 2 with amending 2-2.1R to include removing specific names and emails and adding a general office and email, and pulling 2-4.4. Does that sound right?
That sounds correct.
And language to indicate that voice FOIA requests are permitted by phone and in person, presumably.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Reed, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Pardon,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Ms. Purcell.
Yes.
5 in favor.
Motion carries. Thank you again, Ms. Bressler, for all of your work.
Can I get one clarification?
Sure.
On policy 238, did you guys want the short or the long form? My suggestion, the division suggestion, was the short form because we don't have any charter schools.
Short form is appropriate, I think.
Short form.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys.
Okay, there we go. I just point out again, I want to thank Dr. Davis, and again, remind everybody, anybody that's listening, that between first and second read, that is an appropriate time to send an email, get on the website and submit suggestions. You can also do it before that too, right? Or you can also come to the board meeting like Dr. Davis did on the night of second read, so that you guys can hear, verbatim what the suggestion is or what the proposed revision is. But that's an excellent job, and you were right on time, Dr. Davis, so thank you so much. and that helps to really define our procedure. So thank you.
I've got to say one last thing, and I'm reiterating what Dr. Gimple has said, that I'm very hopeful that members of the community, members of faculty and staff come forward and make suggestions. I know everybody up here is certainly willing to hear them and consider them. I said it before, the comments made during public address were well taken, and I appreciate people coming forward. Thank you.
And I just want to thank the division for helping us with this process. I've said this many times before, but I'll go ahead and say it again. We learned in April of 2025 just kind of how far behind we were with our policy review, and it's pretty profound. And we are in compliance with our own policies. We are in compliance with FOIA. We have many issues that we're going to try to address by updating these policies. It is kind of slow and fast, and at the same time. And I appreciate everyone's hard work and collaboration. And to just reiterate something that Dr. Gimple said earlier, I think in his superintendent's report, so many of these don't touch our daily lives. We're the ones who will be approving them, but we're not the ones that have to live with them. So kind of understanding ramifications that we might not know because we're not in classrooms and in buildings in the same way is extremely, extremely helpful to help us make better decisions on your behalf. So thank you all. Okay, moving on. The next item on the agenda is to have a discussion regarding our legislative agenda. This is something that I think happened more regularly before COVID and then kind of fell away. And it's important. We have connections and a way as a school board to voice concerns about the decisions people outside of our roles are making that affect us, like when state budgets are approved on June 29th and federal decisions at the federal level as well, or decisions at the local level about where businesses are located, speed limits, that kind of thing. Sometimes those deciding bodies don't understand how this impacts schools. So I was hoping that you all could give some kind of direction about some legislative priorities that we can advocate on behalf of. So does anyone want to start? Or Dr. Gimple, I know that you were hoping to restart having an event that invited local electeds to kind of get them connected to Montgomery County and what's going on what's going on here. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it just I've got some experience with inviting legislatures to a breakfast or a lunch where we can have some dialogue and just to try and impress upon them exactly what some decisions are impacting our schools in our division, and also the kind of things that we would like to see them advocate for in order to support our schools better. And so that's really the idea, is to get an audience, right? Get an audience of legislators so that our school board, our community can just have a face-to-face conversation about, these are the things impacting our schools. Here's where we need help. Because otherwise they don't know, right? And I think that goes a lot further than just writing a letter or something along those lines, or writing an email.
Had you identified any dates yet, or kind of what you were thinking that event might be?
I'm trying mid-October to late October. I know that Salem also has a legislature meeting, And so I'm trying to kind of make sure I'm not hitting the same dates as them, but we should have some invites going out here pretty shortly, and trying to set up a day, and it could be a midweek day, something like that. But yeah, I'm aiming for mid to late October.
And hopefully it's something that we all can attend
Absolutely.
as well. Right?
No, please, yes, yeah. Would love for you to all to be there.
Great.
Tell me when, I'll show up.
Yes, sir.
So, board members, anything in particular that
Sure.
I'd like to start with? Go ahead, Dr. Roundtree.
We have a list that had previously been put forward, so but I reiterate it. So pushing for vaping and THC regulations to try to better keep these devices out of our children's hands. We have a state-run resource that sells alcohol, but seems like anybody can set up shop to sell vapes or whatnot. Funding SOQ positions. I thought that this legislature that very much ran on funding SOQ positions, but didn't give us significantly more SOQ funding this year. Continuing to push for lunch and breakfast for all students in our state, making sure that our children, their bodies are well fed so that we can feed their minds. And supporting anti-voucher positions for private school systems. There's actually currently some petitions going around for anybody that's interested. I'm sure people will be posting them to social media here in the coming days. Capital funding from the school system, capital funding from the state level. The state provides basically no capital funding for schools. The past couple years, they've had a couple $100 million that they've provided, and they gave themselves a pat on the back. CHS costs $100 million. So unless you're in the billions of dollars, you're not providing capital funding for schools. Special ed funding. Now, this is really the federal government that is supposed to fund this, but getting our state legislators to get on board to help out with special ed funding and to push our our federal legislators to push the federal systems to fund special education as it was proposed in the original act would be extremely beneficial. Expanding pre-K. We have Cuba and Nicaragua that provide pre-K to their citizens free of charge. Two of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. I think we can do the same here in Virginia. Lack of childcare, in general, the lack of childcare across the board for families, not just our educators, but our educators are who we are employing, but having reasonable childcare even before pre-K. Mental health services for our students, increasing mental health services for our students. Some of those reasons that we restrict devices during breaks of schools are because there are inappropriate things that are searched during those times of years, and they set off alarms. We also don't want kids looking up those kinds of things during those periods of times. But also talking about the real hardships of growing up and the difficulties associated with growing up, and the fact that sometimes we have bad thoughts, and taking care of those bad thoughts and going to people get support for those. More funding for registered nurses in schools. And then moving the RSS program, that's the school resource officer program for retired school security officer. There we go. Retired school security officer program out of the school systems and into law enforcement agencies, where rather than having somebody that the school employs that is for a security officer, having a retired school security officer in the law enforcement program or preferably a retired law enforcement person that can then draw their retirement benefits without penalty while working a VSR or VRS job in the same time. But having those where an agency that supports people that wear body armor and carry guns are the ones that are supporting people that carry guns and wear body armor. So that's my 11.
I'll keep this very brief because I'm going to piggyback on the funding issue. And I know everybody everywhere is strapped. Funds are tight for everybody. But I think the one thing, if we could get some sort of funding for after-school transportation, that would it would include all the other students. By the way, I've had several people come up to me and say, I'm not able to have my child in some after-school program because I work 9 to 5 and I can't get there in time. Having that available would be very inclusive. It would build a sense of community. The children would be able to build relationships with their peers, and it would go very far to make sure people aren't left out. I believe many of the things that we ask for in terms of funding may be pipe dreams, but finding some kind of way to make sure everybody's included and can participate in after-school activities, I think is an attainable goal, and I hope we can all collaborate and push for that.
Ms. Parton?
So, Mr. Roberts, I believe you're requesting an activity bus. So that was brought up years ago with Dr. Meyer, and there was lots of community people that spoke out to exactly what you're addressing, especially down in District C, with not only the distance, but just not having the accessibility. But it's here too. It's right here. It's people that live a mile within the school, maybe live behind the school, don't have a parent there to take them, don't have a way to get home. So we've been talking about this for a while, and I would love to see it come to fruition, but I do know that there's a cost associated, but that has been a desperate need for a long time. And I do think it would help get their children involved that normally aren't involved and want to be, but not by their choice, because they have no option. And I think that could even go as far as help out with discipline as well. Because if you're engaged and you've got something going on, then you're going to not have anything not to do.
Ms. Bond?
I'm just going to say, I'm going to piggyback on that statement, though. Although I think that's a great thing, I also think our extra after-school activities are getting earlier and earlier and earlier. So it's not only sometimes about getting there. Parents want to see what their children are doing. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes that's tough. It's not just about getting them to practice. It's about having parent support.
No.
And
we've had games start at like 4 and 4:30.
Yeah.
When my daughter, and I'm like, when did games start starting before 5 o'clock? Because
maybe a program just to look at all of it, because that's also, I know, a problem, one of the problems of why sometimes coaches for different things are hard, because they can't, unless it's somebody that we employ, they can't take off that time early in every profession to be able to do that. And we miss out on a lot of special people that could do a great job. that we don't have someone interested in our schools that are teachers. So if we're going to look at activity buses, then that goes with a whole other program. And even though all the things you said, Dr. Roundtree, are important, I think we do need to limit it. Usually we pick 3 or 4 things that we feel good about, we feel like really could make an impact. And for me, that's what I would prefer to do, is to pick the most important things that we think we want to move forward. And because every other division also has the list this long. So that would be where I would feel. Let's pick that the board feels very strong about a few and say, hey, this is what we really think is important to our district. I think we would be heard more.
Dr. Gimple?
I can give you a couple also. I'd start with raising the state share so that our teacher salaries are above the national average. And I'm not talking about our local share of that, but our state share, so that the state has a desire to raise our teacher salaries above the national average. We need to change the composite index so that it's not calculated on a single year of data, but that it's part of a 3-year average, so it accurately reflects the conditions within our community. Making sure that SOQs also include transportation folks and our aides, which right now it does not, so that funding is provided to cover bus aides, classroom aides, special education aides, and those folks that fall out of the SOQ funding. The topic of cut scores is a popular one among superintendents right now. It would be very nice if the state would provide some impact studies on how the new cut scores are going to affect schools, and not just implement new cut scores without having some of that data shared amongst school divisions, so that we can accurately provide feedback on what those cut scores are going to look like, instead of going into it blind and hoping for the best. I don't think that's a great way for the state to do business in terms of cut scores. I have a couple more, but I think flexibility in how we can certify our staff to do dual enrollment and also CTE, and who can teach those courses, is also required. Right now, you have to have a degree in that subject area. We have some absolutely brilliant teachers that could teach dual enrollment, but simply can't because their degree isn't specified. And so that limits some of the classes that we can provide. So flexibility there. And I've got a list of other ones, but I'll stop right there because in the aspect of time here, sorry. I have a soapbox I can really get on, but I'll refrain for right now.
So that's a pretty lengthy list, and what we can do is share that among the board and then maybe kind of give a thumbs up for a top 4, something like that. I think that seems fair. It doesn't stop any individual from, supporting something that is important to them. I do want to touch on something that Dr. Roundtree mentioned that's a little bit different and more time sensitive than some of the other items, and that's related to vouchers, because there is a federal voucher program that Virginia is committed to, that will pull public money away from public schools to pay for private school tuition unless the governor pulls out by January 1. And I think that kind of falls out of the scope of asking what we'd ask our congresspeople, our senators, our delegates, and our state senators to do, or our mayors and council members and supervisors. So I would like the board to potentially consider perhaps passing a resolution asking the governor to pull out of that program, because if we don't, that's less money for us in the state budget next year. I don't know what kind of information you all feel like you would need to feel comfortable doing that. But I just wanted to put that out there to kind of see how you all would feel about an action like that, because it's not something that we do very often.
I suggest we put it on our next agenda.
Discussing a resolution or a resolution?
Put the resolution for discussion and vote on the next agenda.
Could we go out a month?
I think that's probably
First read.
second.
First read next time.
I agree.
Vote 2 meetings away.
I'm good with that.
That would be better.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate you all just considering that possibility. Okay, does everyone feel heard on legislative agenda discussion?
I just say that I think we shouldn't limit ourselves to only a few items. They have plenty of staffers to draft legislation, and if we have good legislative ideas for them to put together, then we should provide them all to them.
So I am a proponent of putting forward 3 ideas. Your best is first, second best is last, and then you got some filler. And if you come in and watch me in court, every time my best is first, I put a little filler so I can blab, and the last one is the maybe argument. Fewer is always better.
We'll revisit this next time. Thank you all for a productive discussion. Are there any items of unfinished business? Are there any items of new business?
I have a question. I had received an email, and I haven't been to every school lately, but I thought that we flew the American and state flag at every school, but someone shared with me that there are some schools that do not fly the flags or do not have flags on property. Just a question. Do we? Can we find out?
I will absolutely look into that.
Okay. Thank you.
Wasn't aware that we didn't have them at every school, but I will work with my staff and we'll make sure that every school does have one.
And I would like to even, because I know during, on Election Day, I even had some people, when I was at the polls at Auburn High School, their flag is very, very small compared to some of the other high schools too. So I would even kind of like to take a look at the flags that we do have to make sure that they're adequately sized, you know, for some of the larger fields. And thank you.
Other items of new business? I don't think this is necessarily, if no one else has something else to say. Thank you, Ms. Bond, for that notification about the flags. Ms. Osborne reminded me earlier today that at our, so I think this isn't really old unfinished business because it wasn't from the last meeting, it's from a long time ago. At our retreat, we did kind of pencil in a fall retreat for maybe October 3rd with a backup date of September 26th. And I guess I just kind of wanted to refresh people's memories about that, and I don't think we necessarily need an answer tonight, but to make a decision about if we want to do that and what we might want to do at that retreat, given that we have a lot of questions and concerns still about the policy review process and Section 3 about business operations that involve finance and budget, that we could potentially all benefit from a deep dive in an afternoon, slogging through it together. That could be a useful way to spend a retreat. I know that Dr. Gimple had a couple of ideas as well, so I just wanted to throw that out there and let people think about it. It was, October 3rd. And then I think a potential backup, and we talked about this it was actually February, I think, not April, September 26th. And I know that those dates might not be.
Can we just get the administration to send out an email to everybody, since we have 2 people missing also?
Of course.
For a reminder to say, hey, check on October 3rd and September 26th. Let us know if you're still good for those dates.
Okay. Any other items of new business? Any announcements?
Yeah, I think we've been having a good start to the new year. A few bumps here and there. Just a reminder to kids, a lot of new drivers out there. Slow down, drive slower. Pay attention. Turn the music down. Seatbelts on. No phone. And parents too, watch out. There's kids in the neighborhoods walking around the school systems and whatnot. So just everybody be careful. And also we have students coming back in, so watch out for students and watch out for students not watching out for you potentially while crossing the road. So thank you.
I'd like to thank the town of Blacksburg for installing some speed monitoring cameras on Toms Creek Road and Price's Fork Road. 'Cause those are 2 pain points at school arrival and dismissal. I'm really curious to see what comes of them when they're active. I think they might still be in the test period. And again, just thanks to everyone that made the first day of school and first week of school so successful. I know it took a tremendous amount of work, and we appreciate it immensely. All right, so without any other announcements or information, our next meeting, we actually have a double header coming up. August 31st is a joint meeting that we have with the Board of Supervisors. That's a Monday. And then our first meeting of September will be the next day on September 1st. So look forward to seeing you all there. And if there aren't any other comments, questions, announcements, information, I adjourn this meeting at 9:09 p.m. Thanks, everyone.